All right, happy May Day for the Pass Interference Podcast, brought to you by the wonderful CLNS Media Network. Reminding you, before we even get started on the football, subscribe, listen, watch on YouTube to Patriots Press Pass or my YouTube channel. Cleared 700 subscribers, Danny Kelly, after a year of existence.
Hell
This
yeah.
is what happens when you have a garden and you don't tend to it. It just sprouts and doesn't really go in any particular direction you like, but we appreciate everyone listening. And of course, this podcast is brought to you by Gametime and Prizepicks. You'll hear from them later. In the meantime, Danny Kelly, the Ringer, here May 1st. It is in the afternoon, at least here on the East Coast, talking ceiling and floor for each of the Patriots' top 7 prospects. And we talked about this Monday. We did a live show. You love the ceiling and the floor in this draft class as a whole, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think the top few guys in the class are certainly like really, really memorable. I think Abdul Carter and are you talking about the draft class in general or the Patriots?
The Patriots, yeah. This was your highest.
Yeah, I will say they were my top graded class overall, and I'm not doing that just to suck up to Bill Simmons or get on his podcast. He has a very famous podcast. Yeah, I'm not doing that at all. I actually did like the class a lot. You guys had 6 picks within the top 100 of my big board, which I think was easily the most of any team. Obviously it would have been a little bit more exciting for Patriots fans, I'm sure, to have had the chance to draft either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. But all things considered, that late season win didn't really screw you guys over too much, I don't think, because the team went in and in every round pretty much made like a future starter pick, which is obviously what you're looking for in the draft. Obviously, maybe not a superstar or a Hall of Famer, but getting some good, solid starters in there when you're trying to build around your quarterback is going to help a ton. And that was what the first few picks did, in particular.
I'm so glad that you dismissed, like, that we'll be looking back on that win over Buffalo in the regular season finale as being like not the worst thing that happened in the world, because everyone's brought it up. And I still think it probably will happen May 1st, 2027. Like, remember Joe Milton and how that affected, because Travis Hunter will be an all-pro on both sides of the ball by then. But look, we're moving on. The Patriots did have a great draft, and this is not just according to me or to you. It's according to the people in the league. Our guy Doug Kide had a great piece for the Herald today, plugging my full-time employer, just asking people, hey, what did you think? They're anonymous. They can say exactly what they think. They thought they knocked it out of the park. Now, the question of whether these guys, A, contribute right away, B, are long-term starters, or C, do both, is obviously up in the air. And for context, though, like, what would you say is a generally speaking, successful draft for a team? If you get X number of starters, like, what is that number for an average good draft?
I don't know if I have like an exact number, but I think getting 2 starters out of a draft should be the goal, at least. Because if you look back, and this has happened to probably every team throughout the last couple of decades, but if you look back and you get 0 starters off of a draft, it is really tough. It's really bad for your depth. It really F's up your cap, because you have to go out and spend a bunch of money to get starters, to get players to fill your roster. And those results typically lag a few years. So like 3 years after you have a class that has absolutely nothing from it, you start to say, oh, our roster is really thin right now. Our roster needs this or that or the other thing. We're just not as good. We're not as deep as any of the top teams in the league. And so obviously that's something that the Patriots are dealing with, from having about 4 or 5 straight classes where they got almost nothing.
It sounds familiar. Leading the league in spending this past free agent class. And then 4 years ago. Yes, it sounds familiar. But two more.
Yeah, but that's like, I covered the Seahawks when I was earlier on in my career. I'm still a Seahawks fan. So, the Seahawks, obviously, when Pete Carroll came to town and John Schneider, they had some incredible drafts. They built a Super Bowl roster. They built one of the like stronger rosters we've seen in recent history. And then they had about 4 or 5 drafts where they did absolutely nothing. You get like 2 or 3 starters, period, over a year or over like a 3 or 4 year period. And the roster all of a sudden stinks. You know what I mean? And you're really, John Schneider always says this, the league pushes you back to 8-8. And now it's obviously a 17 game season, but the league, based on the way that the draft works, the way that your scheduling works, they're trying to cultivate parity. They're trying to get everybody back to 8-8. It's designed that way. That's what it's supposed to do. But if you don't get like 2-3 starters in any draft, then it's really, really tough. It's really, really tough to stay at the top. So I think I haven't done like a scientific study on this, but I'm just kind of guessing. Getting 2 starters out of a draft class, I think you're at least getting par, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like you're staying on track.
Yeah, and especially with the contracts, like, look, if you get 2 starters every year within a 4-year span, so all of them
Yes.
should still be under contract and with the team, that's 8 starters who are young, entering their prime at a
Right.
22 in offense or defense. Like, you're crushing it. Like, I would say that's
Yes.
almost half of an entire offense or an entire defense.
If you can get a star in every draft,
Oh
think
my
about how much that is a force multiplier for you.
yeah.
And obviously the quarterback position is the most important. So, yeah, I think that should be the goal. If you basically 1 to 2 starters, hopefully 1 Pro Bowl type player a year would be ideal, but obviously it doesn't happen to everybody.
Yeah, no, it does not. All right, so that's the bar, and I think you and I look at this class as we go through Will Campbell all the way down to Craig Woodson, or excuse me, Bradyn Swinson. So we're going to go rounds 1 through 5. All due respect to Marcus Bryant, the long snapper Julian Ashby, and Kobe Minor, who triggered one of the worst since deleted
Minor
from the Patriots account in a long, long time. We're just going to do the top 7 guys, how good we think they can be, what the ceiling is going to be, and then obviously the floor. And some of the floors are not going to be pretty, but that's how this goes and this works. Again, if you have 2 starters in a class and that means success, it also means you're having probably 3 or 4 guys who just get cut within a year or two, because that's how this goes. So let's start with a guy who we have spent the most time on January to the draft, and I'm talking about the least since the draft, which is Will Campbell, right? 4th overall pick. You are high on him. Obviously, the fit makes a ton of sense when we look at, is this a top 5 pick who rewards you with several Pro Bowlers, or is this a guy who, is good enough to start for years and years? We'll see. But the best case scenario for Will Campbell is what in your mind?
I think he has the potential. He has the talent and the movement skills, the athleticism to be a Pro Bowler. Yeah, I think, you have that. I think his floor, in my opinion, his absolute floor, and Patriots fans aren't going to love this, but is as a very good starting guard. You know what I mean? And at the very least, like, that's something, you know what I mean? And everything we just talked about, where you cannot strike out in a draft. If you strike out in a draft, it sets you back years. And so Will Campbell comes in and gives them that floor. At least I believe he's going to be a very good starter. If it's at guard, obviously that's not the best value, but it's not nothing. And so I actually like the pick. I think it's great. I think he has potential to be a Pro Bowl tackle. I will say, the sort of ad nauseum talk about his wingspan and the arm length stuff, it did start to scare me just a little bit before the draft. Not scare me, but it's just in the back of my mind. So I think there is that. He would be a little bit of an outlier in terms of his arm length, his wingspan. But every time I've ever listened to him talk, every time I've watched him play, I'm just like, this guy gets it. This guy's a stud. I think he's going to be a long-time starter, a long-time, kind of anchor for that offensive line. And nothing is more important than protecting Drake May and getting him developed and turning him into, I think, what can be an elite quarterback in this league. And so it just made a ton of sense to me to make this pick. Obviously, Patriots fans, I think, wanted a little bit more flash or sexiness or whatever. But overall, I'm very, I think it was a smart move by the Patriots.
Yeah, look, Will Campbell, if you had a lab in which you needed to build players for Mike Vrabel, they probably, like Will Campbell, average a personal foul per game, as he did back at Neville High School in Louisiana. Then you go and start your fire leader competitor. Oh, and then Mike Vrabel shows up. You knock him on his ass in a workout that really seals the deal. Like, he's violent. He's got incredible football character, according to anyone that you talk to. And I'm talking to more and more for a story. So the pick made a lot of sense. I look at this, and you talk about a very good guard. And again, we're doing floor. Like, it gets no worse than this. This is worst case scenario, not what we think. I threw out Will Fries because they're not similar athletes. Will's a much better athlete. That's a guy who had tackle experience in college. He was a 7th round pick. So again, let's be clear, but had a really, really good year last year for the Colts. And then signs and goes to Minnesota. And I think the Patriots may or may not have been on him, but you look at him and go, he's a better run blocker than pass protector. But even last year, PFF, I think he was in their top 15, top 20 guards. And that, you filter it out based on snaps played. Like, he's even higher than that, maybe top 12. That's a good guard, right? Fair or foul?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair comp. He just went out and got good money in free agency. Didn't stick with the team that drafted him, but overall the NFL clearly valued him. I think, and obviously, there's a ton of talk at this time of year around how high you can take a guard in the draft and whether that's a good value because of the contract situation, just overall the viewpoint that it's not a premium position. But at the same time, honestly, if he ends up going to guard and he is a good guard, Like, think about the impact that's going to have not only on the run game, which is going to be important, but in terms of just having a pocket in front of your quarterback. Like, this is what we saw for, Drew Brees for all those years. Had a great interior offensive line, and that just allowed him to sit back there and pick apart defenses. When your quarterback is facing immediate pressure, and everything happens really quickly on the interior offensive line, when they're facing immediate pressure and having to move their feet, what's one thing that we heard ad nauseum about Drake May coming into the league? When he moves his feet, when he has to get like off platform, that's when his mechanics start to get a little shaky.
Mhm.
And so just having a guy who can, like, Drake May can sit back and set his feet and pass, like, that's only going to be good. So even though that's not the ideal situation, the ideal situation is he's a left tackle, protects the blind side long term, provides incredible value in his rookie contract, all that stuff. Like almost like the worst, not the worst case scenario, because the worst case scenario is he sucks, but I just don't see that happening. The realistic bad scenario is that he's a guard, and that he's a good guard, I think. So anyway, yeah, I not to just beat a dead horse, but I thought it was a great pick. I just think right down the fairway, do what you need to do to rebuild this roster. This is a draft you mentioned is like, especially compared to last year, this felt more like an Elliott Wolf, like what we were expecting from Elliott Wolf.
Yes.
Type of draft. So yeah, overall, go, if you don't have confidence in this pick, just go look up interviews with Will Campbell.
He's got a deep, and this is going to sound strange, from a 33-year-old man to a 21-year-old who just turned 21 in January, soothing voice. Like there's an old soul somewhere in there speaking for Will Campbell, but there's just confidence.
He's mature, he's confident. And when you watch him, the way that he is leading on the field, like pointing out things to the quarterback, pointing out things to his cohorts on the offensive line, just a really mature, smart player. He has 3 years of starting experience in the SEC, going up against all the best pass rushers the SEC could throw at him. And again, like I said, when I listen to him do interviews, I'm just like, this guy is like already a 30-year-old pro. You know what I mean? And so, because that's one thing that's actually a huge deal in the draft is like, how mature are these guys? Are they going to come in and work? Reading the background in Dane Brugler's The Beast, it sounds like he comes in, he prides himself on working hard and being the first guy in and all that stuff. And he can be a leader on that offensive line from day one, which you don't always see with rookies. You have to, coaches love to create sort of like a competitive culture, and that's to borrow a Pete Carroll term. But, Vrabel, I'm sure, does the same thing where he wants these guys to feed off each other. They want to have competition. They want to, who can be a harder worker, who can do this, that, or the other, who can finish better. And I think Campbell is going to bring that type of mentality.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more cutthroat than Pete, but I think you're absolutely spot on. It felt like
not as much love and rah.
Yeah. What were the names? It was like Takeaway, not Tuesday, right? But he had names for each day of the week.
Yeah, I can't remember. There's like Competition Wednesday, maybe.
Bubblegum Wednesday. Yeah, no.
I can't remember, honestly. But yeah, he had a theme every day of the week. But he was all about creating a competitive cauldron, which is to say, you don't want anyone ever to come in comfortable. You want to make people uncomfortable. He did this in every different way. Every meeting was different. Every practice was a little different. You can't just come in and kind of go through the motions with him. And I think Vrabel probably has a very similar attitude, maybe in a different way. But you want to keep players uncomfortable so they're striving and straining and working hard to get better.
Yes. All right. I have a 2-part ceiling for Will Campbell, and one you hit on, Pro Bowl tackle. I mentioned him before, but only recently in the last couple of weeks. Brian O'Neill is my ceiling for Will Campbell. 2-time Pro Bowler with the Vikings. Started 7 years there, talking about over 100 games. His wingspan, also historically pretty short, like just an inch and a quarter longer than Will Campbell's. But he was also an elite athlete coming out of Pitt. He had played a little bit of tackle, some saw him as a guard. He stuck there at tackle. So a guy who might make another Pro Bowl, I don't know, but had a really good season for Minnesota last year. It was otherwise a disastrous line. Like, this is the athlete overcoming the wingspan in the way you brought up Drew Brees. I've said this, talk about more ad nauseum points that were made. You can make up for a outlier trait that's in a negative sense if your other traits are exceptional, right? If you're going to be a height, weight, speed exception in the NFL, you must be an exceptional athlete and an exceptional competitor. I think Will Campbell is. Yeah. The second part of the ceiling is Joe Thuney at guard, because you want to talk about athletes and natural movers, and you saw his arm length come into issue in the Super Bowl. Whatever, you lost the Eagles, there's no shame in that. But he could play left guard after playing left tackle, which I think is a real possibility for him to transition, just like Joe Thuney did, who played left tackle at NC State. So those are my two. Did I come up short though on Brian O'Neill? Like, is there
No,
another
I think that makes sense. Do you think there's a chance that Campbell ends up at right tackle? Because I think doesn't O'Neill play primarily right tackle?
He does play right tackle. I didn't see the arm length as being a sides thing to me. It's just more of like how well can you operate on an island,
especially in the NFL now, where half the best pass rushers in the NFL are rushing on the right tackle these days.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's totally fair. And like you said, the arm length parallel, that makes a ton of sense. The athleticism, sort of the twitchy movement ability, makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I think those are great examples. The Thuney one actually really resonates as well.
Yeah, Thuney, by the way, he probably needs another All-Pro or certainly a couple more Pro Bowls. There's a Hall of Fame path there for him.
Really?
Like, not like the winning. I think so. He's an unbelievable pass protector, one of the most durable players in the NFL since he got here in 2016. We don't need to do the Joe Thuney rabbit hole. I'm just kind of pulling for my guy who was like all about business.
Yeah.
It was also the most regular human being I've ever seen. I swear to God, Danny, we would take attendance that we do at the beginning of every practice when he was here, and we would go through, you're looking at the jersey numbers, they're stretching, they're shuffling, sprinting, whatever. And we're like, where's Joe? Every single time the man is coming out of the porta potty from the opposite side of the field. Like, oh, he's back. So nice. He's just the most regular on schedule, ready to go.
Just lunch pail. Just a lunch pail guy.
Yeah, we've never told him, but we're like, all right, where's so-and-so would be now, like Christian Barmore. It's like, is he taking a Thuney or is he what's he doing?
Oh, like, he's going number Thuney.
That's good. There you go. Okay, yeah, we glossed over that, but that's so much better. All right, speaking of number 2, TreVeyon Henderson.
Yeah.
What's your ceiling for him? Because I know a lot of people love this pick, and I love the player.
The ceiling is, and this is a comp that kind of gets thrown around, and I don't think he's quite as good, but like a Jahmyr Gibbs type of player. A Jahmyr Gibbs, in the Jahmyr Gibbs role, where you are an explosive, complementary piece to the offense, good in the passing game. A player that, and this is something I saw on his tape, a player that can access rush lanes that most running backs can't, just because the acceleration and burst and speed to run to daylight. Also, the vision to let your block set up. He has a really good feel for varying his tempo as a runner. Like, some runners are just one speed, they're just going, and half the time they end up in front of their blockers, which is one of the most annoying things for me, because I'm like, dude, the coaches worked all week on this. You practiced this play 12 times, and now you're running in front of your blockers. Like, it just drives me nuts. So watching TreVeyon Henderson, he's really good at kind of like waiting, drafting off of his offensive linemen, letting those blocks set up, letting them do the dirty work, and then running to daylight when he has the opportunity to do that. Great pass pro, great in pass pro, great in the passing game overall. Everything you heard about him, another guy that I'm sure Vrabel is just going to love, because he is all about ball, all about competition. Just everything you hear from the Ohio State camp is that he's like the greatest guy ever. So everybody loves him. So, but in terms of stylistic play, I just kind of picture the upside, the ceiling comp being a Jahmyr Gibbs type of player, where you get that explosive element and you get the big play ability in space in the passing game, and just sort of the way he varies his running tempo.
So I have a comp. This goes back 20 years, and the pace is on point. He's not as shifty, but the skills in the passing game as a blitz pickup guy and as a pass catcher.
Mm-hmm.
Shades of Brian Westbrook. You see it, and that's like the ceiling is Brian Westbrook only made 2 Pro Bowls.
Yeah,
he made 1 All-Pro team, but when he was on the field, it was like, hey, we got to be sound in our leverage, right? Like, we have to wrap up. If we don't, he's gone to the house. Do you see that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I think stylistically, there's a lot of similarities there, and he was kind of like always just a natural football player. That's kind of how I see Henderson do. I think I honestly like would have to go rewatch like tapes of Brian Westbrook to like remember exactly like what his like run style was, but like in terms of role in the passing game and just being super reliable, all that stuff, I can absolutely see that.
Yeah, both 5'10", 200, which those numbers felt boosted for Brian Westbrook, who always looked a little bit smaller. And like, again, TreVeyon's not as light on his feet as a guy who would be in the hall of very good if we had one for pro football only. But he's like, we talk about ceiling. Mina said this on the show you did last Monday, was like, she sees top 5 potential for him of all running backs in the league. And that's where Brian Westbrook was for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love TreVeyon. I actually ranked him just one spot ahead of Omari and Hampton, which I think pissed some people off just because, I don't know, I think passing game value is really important in the NFL. And like I said kind of earlier, just TreVeyon Henderson's ability to come in from day one and be the guy that you can trust is not going to get the quarterback killed. That alone is just so valuable from a coaching point of view, where you can put this guy on the field and you just know he's going to like do his job, pick up the blitzer, protect. And a lot of times he knocks dudes on their ass when they're blitzing in whatever gap. And so just the ability to protect the quarterback, again, it's helping Drake May. Nothing is more important than helping Drake May self-actualize, be the best that he can be. If you're the coach or from every level of the organization, that is like priority number one, because you can't, I mean, the Patriots of every team know, like, you're only going to go as far as your quarterback can take you. And I think Drake May has elite potential, but he needs to get there. He needs help getting there. So I think that's kind of like put me over the edge in terms of just his ability to come in from day one and be really trustworthy in protecting the quarterback and doing his part in the passing game. It's really valuable. And obviously I have a kind of, bias towards super explosive guys in space. And so I just like that too.
Yeah, we were on the Basel Tootin train. We didn't know it. We were in separate cars, and I didn't know you were on there until.
Oh, you're a Tootin guy, huh? You're rooting for Tootin? Yeah.
Fumbles don't matter. Fumbles.
Just practice that a little bit there. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's disappoint everybody. Here comes the floor. And this isn't even a terrible floor, but again, this says he will be no worse than this player. I went Felix Jones, and another guy who's about 5'10", 200.
And you're going with the way back tracks here.
I know. Look, when I bring the comps to the comp god,
I like it.
Reaching to all dimensions and places, real or fictitious. I gotta
bring it. Great. Anytime you make me go, that's interesting. That's exactly what I think the point of doing comps is. It's like, that's an interesting one. Yeah. Then it makes you go back and watch some highlights and things like that. I like that.
Yeah. So Felix Jones, I thought he was in the league longer than this. Only 6 seasons. He was best in a running back by committee, which you saw in Dallas and you will see in New England with Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. He never started more than 8 games. So this speaks to TreVeyon gets banged up, which happened at Ohio State, a little too much wear in the tires, never had more than 800 yards, but his best seasons had over 5 yards a carry. So there's that explosive element. He also had several catches and was just a solid pass catching back, mostly in Dallas, finished up in Pittsburgh. But that's the floor here. Like, Felix Jones' potential, once everyone was like, oh, here comes the next, big running back in the league, great offensive line in Dallas, him and Darren McFadden, yada, yada. And it didn't materialize like that. But that's true for every player. There's some risk that you just get banged up or disappoint. And right now, disappointment for TreVeyon Henderson is Felix Jones.
Right. And that's, like you said, 6 years is actually, I think, a pretty solid career for a running back, to be honest. In this league, it's just such a grueling position. You have so many injuries. When you can get a second contract as a running back, period, like that's a win, I think. And so I'm watching some highlights now. Felix Jones, I can absolutely see this. This is a great call. Kind of smooth runner, like explosive. Get him to the edge, let him do one cut and go. That makes a ton of sense. I had forgotten about Felix Jones a little bit. Was Julius Jones his brother? Were they related? No,
that was Julius and Thomas.
Right.
Like the most rocked up dude, Bears and then Jets. And I'm like, I know he's not the best running back in the league, but Thomas Jones had some of the best aesthetics ever.
Yeah.
A modern back. What's your floor though for him?
I think that that comp is really smart in terms of just like a solid starter. That's maybe not ever going to be like a star, never going to be, maybe he won't live up to like sort of the billing, because I think TreVeyon Henderson, especially when he came into college, is like a big deal and, went out winning a national title and all that stuff. Maybe he won't live up to that billing, but I think solid starter who can be relied upon in the passing game on third downs, like that's kind of his floor. Maybe never going to be a big time volume guy. I'm trying to think of a good comp for that. But yeah, like I think like the worst case is you get like a solid rotational running back.
Yeah, and especially with that explosive element, because that's the tough part. Guys who have the whole skill set like he does don't typically disappoint,
right?
Or they have a short career because they do get a little bit stunted. Like I don't know, there were like this is again another way back comparison. Remember Javid Best?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was, and he was more of a one cut than TreVeyon is, but had a really short career due to injury. And you're like, that would have worked out, or maybe I just wanted it to work out because I thought he had an A+ name.
His was concussions, right? He just couldn't stay healthy in the league. This is like a really, let's see, that's too low. That's too low. I was thinking like Justice Hill, but in the league for like 5-6 years. That's kind of like obviously super disappointing if you hear that.
He's got more juice. Yeah.
But I mean, like my upside comp for him was Austin Eckler, where a guy who's just,
I like that a lot.
Using space or explosive. I think he also can be like a lead back guy, like a de facto lead back. Austin Eckler was, he's never a big guy, but he was a de facto lead runner for them for years. But yeah, I think like a Justice Hill type guy where you trust him to come in on third downs, maybe never a star, but a guy that you can depend on, is kind of like the low end comp, I think, for him.
All right, time to get to my favorite pick. But first, a word from our friends over at Gametime. Look, football season is still months away, but you do not have to go waiting until September to get great deals and go to the games you want to. You just have to go to Gametime, where they give you 110% guarantee to find the lowest price in any tickets anywhere, wherever you want to go. This could be games, it could be basketball playoffs, hockey playoffs, concert show. And 110% means if you find a lower price elsewhere, they will reimburse you 110% of the difference to make it up to you. So you go to Gametime, as I actually did a couple weeks ago. Was out hanging out near Danny Kelly. We did not connect, but I went to a marriage game, and I took my wife and her friend, and I said, okay, they just want to sit, and they want to hang out, and they want to be in the shade. And they were, because I found tickets for under $40 on the infield, in the shade. Big win, all thanks to Gametime. So go to Gametime right now. Download the Gametime app today. Use code CLNS for $25 off your first purchase, only at Gametime. Again, if you download the Gametime app today, you get $25 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Code CLNS. And do what I do. Scan through the last minute deals where you can save up to 60% off. So again, download the Gametime app today, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. CLNS is the code. Gametime app, last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Kyle Williams. This man, I think, got a discount at the 69th overall pick. I have one comp here, which is a player who's a second-year wideout that the Patriots famously missed out on. But this is a 96% match by Athletic Profile according to my draftable. And I see it. I see it, Danny Kelly. Ladd McConkey.
That's a great one. Yeah.
I think uncovers, good against man-to-man. They both have tiny hands, whatever. If they're open, I don't care how big the hands are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And he was better catching, like more consistent catching the football. And this is, again, why I try not to get too hung up on drops and things like that, because I think earlier on his career, Kyle Williams had some issues with drops and then he got better. That's what happens a lot of times. So the hand size thing is not a huge concern for me. But yeah, I think Kyle Williams, that's a good comp, because the first thing, like when I picture Kyle Williams in my mind, the first play, like type of play that comes to mind is he'll like run these little comeback routes or hitch routes where he gets open. He can decelerate and stop on a dime, be open. And then he does this thing where he like reverse pivots away from the like it's like almost like he's on the like the low post. He'll like reverse pivot away and like
spin and spin.
Yeah, and the corner will like just go flying past him. He has a really good feel for that for whatever reason. He just kind of knows which direction like their momentum is going to be taking them, and then he reverse pivots away. And this is why I comped him to Deontay Johnson, which now kind of sounds terrible, but like the peak version of Deontay Johnson was really shifty, really interesting. Body control, ability to get open early on in his route and give his quarterback a target. He can get deep sometimes, and then run after catch. Obviously, Deontay Johnson ended up being a bit of a head case, and that's not really working out. But like talent wise, he was always really good. And so, yeah, the McConkey one makes sense, because the first thing with McConkey for me is like his acceleration, his ability to catch the football from a dead stop, accelerate away from defenders, run after the catch. Kyle Williams was really good in this last year, running after the catch, breaking tackles. He's not a big guy, but he's got really good acceleration, really quick feet, and just like I said, kind of a good feel for making defenders miss and kind of using their momentum against them to run away from the coverage. And so, yeah, that one makes a ton of sense to me. I think he's even a little bit more versatile than McConkey, because he played outside quite a bit as well, and he can play outside if they really want him to. I think McConkey was kind of seen more as like a slot receiver. who can play outside. McConkey played outside in college, but I think most people kind of saw him as like a slot type of dude.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a really intriguing comp. I like that.
Yeah, so they're both 5'10-ish. They're both around 180, 90 pounds, 4.4 speed, really good against man coverage. You have some questions about size and durability and this and that. And granted, there was no one else around Ladd McConkey to catch the football in like the entire city of Los Angeles. And so he finished with 82 catches for 1,149 yards and 7 touchdowns.
Quentin Johnston erasure here.
Yeah. Sorry, Q. Kyle Williams is not going to sniff 82 catches, 1,200 yards basically and 7 touchdowns. But I do think the upside is there. Again, this is the ceiling for him. Was a little bit less talented, obviously played at a much smaller school, but has those tools where it's funny you bring up the comeback route specifically where he's pivoting like the old dude at the Y that you can't believe you gave up 32 in a matter of 13 minutes.
Yeah.
It's, you know what his success rate was, Danny, on comeback routes, according to Matt Harmon of Reception Perception?
No, what? Tell me.
Guess.
So the success rate maybe like 75-80%, something like
100%.
Oh, Jesus.
Comeback route.
Okay. Well, I was like, so I think like 80% would be like really good and
exceptional.
Yeah. Okay, so that's
Kyle Williams, whether it's stopping on a dime, whether it's accelerating after the catch, and he averaged something ridiculous, like over 8 yards per catch after he caught the ball.
Yeah.
Like it's just there. And again, there's some mechanical things to work out, and he's a little bit smaller, and we'll see how he does in bump and run. But I've said it over and over again. The variety of releases and how quickly he can stack you with that 4.4 speed if it's a vertical route, or if you're close, lose you at the break point 10, 12, 15 yards downfield. Really good on dig routes, really good on slants. Like he just posts, or it's all there. So I think Ladd McConkey is the upside. But I will, again, disappoint the people because we're doing ceilings and floors here.
Yeah.
Kyle Phillips, another guy profiled very similarly, 5'11", 189. He was quicker than fast, but still ran a 4.4. Former 5th-round pick to Tennessee under Vrabel in 2022, and was all over all of the Patriot beat writers' mocks because he was the small, shifty white guy.
Did he run a fast 3-cone? Yeah,
great 3-cone.
Short shuttle or whatever.
So he's only played 14 games in 3 seasons, and his season high was 181 yards. So he just couldn't put it all together. Got injured. He's not as talented as Kyle Williams, but there's a universe in which Kyle Williams gets banged up, and some of the size concerns do become realized, even if you and I think he's going to be a really good player. So that's my floor. My absolute floor for him is Kyle Phillips.
That one totally makes sense. I was gonna put forth a Jahan Dotson ref for you here because Dotson was a first rounder. I think and obviously he had a lot of speed, quickness, agility, ability to kind of shake defenders and get open. But man, for whatever reason, just has not done anything in the NFL. I guess his first year he had like 6 or 7 touchdowns, but it was like really high variance.
It's like a red zone specialist, you know?
Right. So Jahan Dotson sort of would be like the downside comp to it, where it's like the traits are there, and then for whatever reason, I just didn't know exactly how he never ended up doing much. And then obviously he got traded. Now he's the number 3 receiver in Philly, and kind of an afterthought. So I don't know. It's hard to predict what will happen with receivers. Sometimes like landing spot really does matter a lot too. I think with Kyle Phillips, like landing in Tennessee was just a death knell for him. Like, it's just not, that just was not going to work for anybody there. But yeah, hopefully, I think Kyle Williams honestly has a chance to be like the number 2 receiver in New England this year, which is kind of wild to say. Or at least he has that potential to be so.
Yeah, and you would say that was not such a wild statement if Stephon Diggs was not in the building. But man, baby, they finally got a number 1-ish. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think he could start week 1. And the big question mark, which Doug is always very kind and smart to remind me when I get too excited about Kyle Williams, is, hey, do you remember all the other rookie receivers who came and played for Josh McDaniels? How did that go?
Oh. Can the downside comp be actually Jalen Polk? That actually makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately.
Yeah. So we'll see. But no, I like that. Jared Wilson. So this is their last A2 pick, center out of Georgia. Everyone has loved it. This has been, if you're doing a podcast, you're like, oh, my sneaky actual favorite pick was Jared Wilson. I'm I don't disagree with you, but like we might not see him see the field this year. If he does see the field, he's bigger than this player that I'm going to comp him to. But this is a multi-time Pro Bowler who's only in his 4th or 5th year. But the athletic traits are off the charts. Most athletic center in the draft.
Yep.
Tyler Linderbaum. And I think he's got more versatility as opposed to Tyler Linderbaum's much more of his own center. And they do a lot of gap schemes in Baltimore. But the point is, he is great side to side, gets to the second level in a pinch. He's athletic. He's tough. Like, this is a guy that I think Jared Wilson will need more seasoning than Tyler Linderbaum did coming out of Iowa when he was a first-round pick for the Ravens. But it's about as good as it gets without being kind of the best center in the league. And I don't know if Jared Wilson can do that, but I mean, 2-time Pro Bowler is not bad.
I know I mean, yeah, Jared Wilson was one of the guys I had in mind for the Seahawks. They still need a lot of interior offensive line help. And so I was a little bit bummed when I saw him go off the board to the Patriots. But yeah, I comped him to like a James Daniels. I don't know if that's sort of like maybe the middle range comp for him, like a conservative comp, like a starter potential.
I had a middle range too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I was, to be totally honest, a little underwhelmed watching his tape compared to what I had heard about him. You know what I mean? Because you start to hear about this sleeper, this guy that everybody likes, that the league's really starting to like him a lot. He could go in the second round. And then I watched and I was like, well, I can see the traits for sure. You know what I mean? Like, I can see why teams are intrigued by this guy. And of course, what he did at the combine, you cannot ignore, because I think movement skills, athleticism are important for a center, especially like a zone center, if you're going to be running a lot of zone stuff. But I mean, there were other times where I was just like, he doesn't play with a lot of like finishing attitude. Maybe Vrabel can kind of like, coach that into him. He looked a little lost to me at times, which is totally understandable considering he's a 1-year starter. So I think he needs some seasoning for sure, but the athletic skills, the size, just the overall traits that he has make him a perfect third round. He was a third rounder, right?
Yes, late third round.
Perfect third round pick. You know what I mean? Like a developmental center that could turn into a long-term starter for you eventually. But I think he just needs a little bit more coaching, and he needs a little more seasoning, I guess, as an offensive lineman. Because there was times where I was just like, he just kind of looks a little lost to me, like with what he's doing. And so I think more reps is going to help him.
Yeah, I think too, a guy who can push for the starting job right now, but if he doesn't seize it, they're not worried, right? Which just speaks to what you're talking about as kind of an ideal third round pick. The other, the middle comp I had, and this would be a success. Another one, guard center versatility. Zach Frazier, who's still very early in his career with the Steelers, can kind of see that type of path against similar athletes. He would need to be a little bit more of a mauler. But yeah, I mean, if you're not really going to stick in New England, and I think he will. My floor, speaking with New England, I have a couple more Patriot comps coming up. Early career, Yelda Froholt, where the pick comes in, and it's a guy taken out of Arkansas,
Oregon, right? Oh no,
it was Arkansas, and he might have been somewhere before, but he was like exceptional PFF pass catcher, captain, versatile, like typical Patriots pick, and I think this is 2019 draft. And you're expecting him to maybe seize a job, whatever, at least be in guard, and just never got it. And he was dinged up a little bit, but now you look at him in Arizona, and most teams would want Yelda Froholt. So that guy eventually blossomed, and because of the lack of seasoning, and the expectations were probably just higher among the nerds here in New England than they were across the league, because I think he might have even been seen as a reach, but he figured it out. And I think if Jared Wilson starts slowly, or his career tops out, it will look like it did early on for Yelda Froholt.
I can see that for sure. Yeah, he never went to Oregon. I don't know why I got Oregon into my head. I'm gonna have to figure out who I was thinking of. But yeah, he's Danish guy. Interesting one. I like that. Now I'm gonna be like trying to figure out who this Oregon center that I'm trying to remember.
They've also sent like 36 O linemen to the league in the last 5 years. So like your odds are pretty good just saying Oregon.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But yeah, that's a good one.
A floor here. Anybody else different? Like you don't start, like you hang around the league. Probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sort of the downside comp for that would just be a guy who never sort of develops the aggressive mentality and the type of vinegar that you want to play with in the league, and just sort of ends up being a rotational guy, like a 6th or 7th offensive lineman who can come in and block, but maybe just lacks the power and physicality to stick long term in the league. I think that would be the prototypical player that I would picture with that.
Yeah. All right, cool. Craig Woodson at a Cal. This was the only surprise/reach pick that we had of the whole draft, which was also start of a day 3 pattern where you were like, are they letting Belichick make every other pick here? Because it's just like
the Bill Belichick Memorial draft selection. Yeah. What's the dog's name? Did they call him
Nike?
Yeah, Nike. Did they give him a call and see what he thought?
So I know Linda got Nike in the divorce, not divorce, but breakup, which was a real bummer because, there was so much potential for content with Bill and Nike, but
sure.
Maybe. Anyway, Craig Woodson, do it all safety, good tackler, violent, super smart guy. Of course, they want to take him. His athletic profile didn't lend itself to a lot of easy comps because he runs with 4.4 speed, but you don't see him using that in a typical like single high guy going sideline to sideline, and the hash marks have part of that to do with it whenever you're studying like college film. But he's still 6 foot tall. He's still 200 pounds, does run that 4.4. If he's going to be like a third safety type, and this is another big hitter when given the chance, Duron Harmon was my comp for Craig Woodson. And he's not particularly strong in man-to-man coverage. Neither was Duron. But for a guy who where the expectations are now and how they might use him based on the skill sets of their other players, like I think that is probably his ceiling as another super smart player. And Duron got to be known as the closer, which I also didn't know Doug invented that nickname for all the fourth quarter picks he would have, including in the playoffs.
I like that, yeah.
But if he gets to be the closer, Craig Closer Woodson, that's huge. That's a hit.
Yeah. I would say, like, when I was watching him, and this is, you have to bear in mind that he's a 5th rounder for a reason. You know, obviously there's going to be some holes in the game, but I was pretty impressed with his movement skills, his athleticism. He's got a pretty, like, versatile body type where he could play over the slot. He could play in the box a little bit. He could play like a 2-high look type of deal. And the first guy that came to my mind who's like brings that type of versatility, this is an absolute upside comp, but like Xavier McKinney type of player where you don't have like a set spot you line up in the backfield. You just kind of can do a little bit of everything. So that would be like the aspirational type of player that you're looking at here, I think, and they're around the same size. And McKinney was always flying around. I think with Woodson, there were some times where I thought the angles he took were a little bit wonky. He was like some hesitation in reading and reacting quickly enough to kind of like lose a step in pursuit. But overall, like, honestly, for being a guy who I didn't really study very closely prior to the draft, I'm kind of catching up on some of the day 3 guys right now. I was pretty impressed. Like, I was like, this guy has something maybe. You know, he obviously moves really well. And part of the reason he fell was because he tore his ACL earlier on in his career. And so, I don't know. I think that was an interesting pick. This is a 5th round pick. Like, you're just taking shots on guys and athleticism, versatility. I'm guessing he'll probably be a core special teams player early on. You know, it's a smart 5th round pick. It's you can't expect much from 5th rounders, but I thought he looked pretty interesting, honestly.
So I've got good news for you, Danny Kelly. He went early in the 4th. So
sorry, my bad. Yeah.
Okay. But like he fell too because
day 3 is kind of what I meant. But yes,
he's a 6-year senior and
6-year 24 or almost 24.
Yeah. Older than Jordan Hudson. Fun fact of the podcast episode.
God.
Yep. But look, 6-year seniors, whether you play football or not, you're not going to have like the biggest job market when you leave, because then it's, why didn't you leave a little bit earlier? Like regular students do. You mentioned it, and this is my floor. I don't have a specific player comp, but you just are relegated to like playing special teams and you're in and out of the league in like 3-4 years, which still, gets you. Is it the league pension that kicks in after 3-4 years? Or there's some like long-term benefit?
Do they call it like a vested veteran or whatever, where you 3 years in, I think you start to get, I'm not 100% sure exactly how it works, but yeah, I mean, honestly, if you look across the league over the last like 10 years, some of the safety picks that have happened, it's a tough position. It's a tough position to play. It's a tough position to project to the league, I think. And there's just so many like late day 2, early day 3 guys that I'm kind of excited about that just never do anything. It's a fascinating position, I think. A lot of it has to do with the fact that in college, what you're asked to do is a lot different than what you're asked to do in the pros. Yes. Everybody's faster. You have to have more range. You have to be more smart, or you have to be smarter and have more instincts, I guess, in terms of like anticipating where things are going to go and all that. It's just a really hard position to play. And so, yeah, I mean, for, like I said, a 4th round pick, I said that several times. It was always a 4th round pick, never a 5th round pick. For a 4th round pick, this is the type of thing you're looking for. It's a guy with traits who you can develop, and probably just the special teams primarily is what you're expecting right now.
Yeah. All right, we got 2 more picks. They are 5th round picks, but we'll have to wait for them in a second because I need to talk to you about Prizepicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports place where you can go to win real money. I don't care if you're watching baseball, if you're watching basketball, if you're watching hockey. You've heard me say this before. I do this on the couch. I want to spice up a basketball game and watch it on a Tuesday. Celtics are up by a lot. Boom, we'll play a little bit of prize picks because this is how simple it is. All you need to do is build a lineup of 2 to 6 players. Every single player that you pick comes with a stat. It could be points, it could be rebounds, it could be home runs, it could be hits, whatever. You pick more or you pick less on that player. Then you pick another player. You go more or less. Boom. That's a lineup at Prizepicks. It's that easy, and you have a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today because Prizepicks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Just ask millions of users who have already signed up. And if you sign up today, you will get this, a $50 bonus instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So whether this is basketball playoffs, baseball regular season, hockey playoffs, don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the ice or the field or the ballpark into your Prizepicks lineup and win up to 2,000 times your cash today. But you can only do that if you download the app today and use code CLNS to get that $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. All right, Joshua Farmer. The ceiling here is...
You mentioned fifth round picks. Actually, I have some information for you here.
I did it too.
He was a fourth round pick. So huge mistake on your part. That's embarrassing for everyone. Yeah.
I'm gonna take a 2-minute timeout. Carry us on Joshua Farmer, the world's most famous fourth round pick. The only player they traded up for, so he didn't fall into the 5th round.
Technically, he was the 35th pick in the 4th round, so I think that's what you were thinking. He was effectually ineffective 5th round.
I'm not going to take your lifeline, but I appreciate the gesture. So talk to me about Joshua Farmer, who's projected top 100 pick. He was on your board, a lot of big boards, and fell for reasons that I've explained, but I haven't heard from you so far on Joshua Farmer. What's his ceiling in the league?
Ceiling in the league, it would be a 3-down defender, 3-down interior defensive lineman. Or I guess he could probably play all across the defensive front. I think he's got enough movement skills to if he's like an end in a 3-4. But man, he is. Can you swear on this?
Oh yeah, go for it.
He's built like a brick shit house. He is just. He has a huge ass. He has huge, powerful body, lower body, just like. This guy looks like a football player. He's an intimidating dude in terms of like when you're getting off the bus, like this guy looks like a badass. It's going to be fun to see him line up. I think his sort of mid-range thing, like his mid-range sort of projection to me would be an early down defender who can kind of mix things up, cause chaos against the run, kind of set the defensive line. I don't know if he has a ton of pass rush upside. I think that probably is what kept him from being a higher pick is just the lack of production as a pass rusher, but he can push the pocket. He can create disruption. He's got enough movement and twitch to shoot gaps and things like that. I think his body type, I believe he has really long arms. So just off the top of my head, like good length to play either 3-tech in a 4-3 or, end in a 3-4 type of look. So I think he's got some versatility. He just plays with power, punch. He was a captain, I want to say, for Florida State. So he's, I think, starting to develop some maturity. I think earlier on there was some questions of like overall effort and things like that, but he kind of cleaned that up in this last season. And I don't know, I came away very impressed with him when I watched him because he was sort of a fringe top 100 guy, according to what I was hearing. And so I wanted to put him in my top 100 just because I actually enjoyed watching his tape. Some defensive tackles are just super boring to watch. And he was fun to watch. He mixes it up, I think. Well, you're muted, I think, for me.
It's funny because the production is not through the roof, right? I think it was a team high 4 sacks last year. And so, the fun tape is you're watching for a little bit more of the subtleties or violence, which he absolutely brings, which Vrabel loves. It doesn't result in immediate impact. And the athleticism, like the production, wasn't off of the charts. And this to me was probably the reason why he fell a little bit. Is like, okay, he's a well-rounded player. He's versatile. But like, what are we betting on? Like, this is his go-to trait or skill or move that he wins with. Mm-hmm. Patriots are like, well, if we're drafting for depth here across multiple positions for a guy who's kind of a motherfucker, like we'll just take him. And they did. Yeah. I see, because of the body type is not identical, but height and weight are right there, pinpoint. BJ Hill, who just got his 3rd contract and was more of a 3 technique, but maybe because they're going to play more 4-down fronts here, like fits as a guy who BJ Hill's never topped out above like 6-7 sacks in a season. So the rate at which Joshua Farmer is getting pressure last year, if he can carry that into the NFL, not right away, but down the road, I think that's the upside. The downside is another guy that was actually a 5th round pick in 2015 or 2019, excuse me, Byron Cowher, who was 6'3", 305, and he was a former 5-star recruit, Maryland and then Baylor or vice versa, and just never panned out in New England because it was like, oh, he could be a 5 technique, or if you want to kick him inside, maybe 3. And it just was like, he was with, I think he's with the Jets now and bounced around a couple other places, but really just washed around the bottom of the league and is always a 52nd player on a roster. But that's the floor, I think, for Joshua Farmer, who had much better tape than Byron Cowher did coming out.
Yeah.
But the Patriots fans were familiar with, like, oh, yeah, that guy was on the team for like 3 years.
I think there's a world in which you'll see this guy be a really solid rotational player for you for a few years. And that's like, I think, a straight down the middle, late 4th rounder. That's what you can really hope for. I comped him to Jaron Reed, who is
that's a great one.
He's just a really good run defender, a good, useful early down player who never quite put it all together as a pass rusher. There was some talk early on in his career, like when he was drafted. I think he was a 2nd rounder for the Seahawks. And there was like, oh, he's really good as a run defender, but he also has the twitch to develop as a pass rusher. He didn't really ever do that. I think, he's been productive enough, but he's not like a top tier pass rusher. He's just kind of a guy that you can plug in there on early downs. He's going to do his job. He's going to stonewall offensive lineman and kind of like hold his spot and just kind of do his job. You guys have heard that expression before. So I think he has the potential to be like a really rock solid, just rotational defender for you. And that's like all that you can hope for a late 4th. So I like that pick a lot, actually.
Yeah. Value. And again, part of the question is, why do they fall? And other times hey, this happens every year. Like, it's the draft. You get gifts sometimes from the rest of the league.
Yep.
Can you take advantage? The Patriots moved up a little bit to make sure that they got him. And now they get a pissed off Joshua Farmer because this man threw not one party for the draft, Danny Kelly. He threw 2 Thursday and Friday night. Okay. And everyone went home without anything to celebrate about. So he's made it through. And I think he's a little bit pissed off, and that's what you want from your
chip on the shoulder.
Chip on the shoulder, 4th round pick. Okay, finally, the 5th round pick, the last guy we're going to talk about here today, and then we'll get you out. Bradyn Swinson, 5th round pick at LSU, 8.5 sacks, 4th most pressures in the SEC, 6th most in FBS. Yannick Ngakoue, who we got for a little bit.
Great one.
He's not quite as twitchy, but wins in the same way. You got some speed, you've got power to speed. He's got enough in the tool bag that you go, okay, if he hits his ceiling, like, this is a full-time defensive end who really shines on 3rd down, and we kind of get by in the early downs. And then late in his career, as he was here in New England and Baltimore and Minnesota for a bit, like, he's just a pass rusher. I think that's what he'll be early on. But if he really maximizes his talent, stops butting heads with coaches, there's like real potential here for a difference maker, I think, in the league.
Yeah. I think that's a great example. It's a really good comp. Because if I remember Ngakoue, he was a little bit stiff. And so he's not like the most flexible, bendy athlete going around the corner, but he was just so explosive and had a really good long arm stab, had a couple of moves that he could really rely on. And I think you could say the same about Bradyn Swinson. He was a late bloomer.
Yes.
Transferred to LSU, didn't really do a whole lot before this last season. So I think that's probably why he fell. It's like just the lack of a full resume there. But I mean, you can't ignore 60 pressures, which is 6th most, like you said, in FBS last year. He's twitchy. He has a couple of moves. I noted club and cross chop moves that are really effective. He's basically, I always like a guy who, if they aren't super explosive or super bendy, can use their hands to discard blocks and like just keep guys off their body. And I thought he did a really good job of that. So when you're watching him rush, he has to learn to swipe, club, cross chop, all that stuff, and keep offensive tackles kind of guessing where he's going to go. And so, I think he has, realistically, like, his upside is probably as like a rotational pass rusher, like you said, a 3rd down guy who could come in, give you some depth, provide a little oomph when you need it on 3rd down. I don't know for sure if he'll ever be like a double-digit sack guy. Probably not, but I think he can be a useful rotational pass rusher, and you want that depth on the defensive line for sure.
Yeah. All right. My floor here, and look, 5th round picks get caught all the time, so this is not to discredit him, but I think to capture, a guy who I think really has pass rushing juice, but if you're going to flame out, you might follow the path of one Joshua Uche, who in the last 12 months has re-signed a very cheap deal with the Patriots, and he was a freak athlete who just couldn't play early downs. And then had one super productive season in 2022, but then nothing in 23. 24 gets traded, midseason for a 6th-round pick. Kansas City doesn't return him. Then he signs for pennies for Philadelphia. And that's kind of what you see. Guys are with that type of pass rush theoretically are bet on all the time, and you'll bounce around the league here a little bit. And Josh was a 2nd-round pick, but never found a fit. And Swinson is definitely more of an edge guy, even though they played Josh. People forget off ball because he did a little bit of the Senior Bowl, and the Patriots had no one else in 2020. But the point is, guy who bounces around late, doesn't sign for much, but hangs on because you just can talk yourself into a player like him now and forever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just how useful can he be? Can he stick around on a roster because he's able to come in and situationally kind of mix things up a little bit? I don't know if I ever see star potential, but yeah, I mean, he has the frame, he has the juice as a pass rusher to, I think, be a productive guy. So again, great pick for you guys at that spot in the draft.
Well, I have to take all the credit.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah. No, actually, Doug got him on his last mock, so I will defer the credit this one time.
Oh, nice.
Our guy, Doug Hyde, who's now come up 5 times in this podcast. All right, you are about to take a well-deserved break, my friend. Outstanding coverage is always on the draft. We can and should, and this goes for everyone, listen to you on the Ringer Fantasy Football Show, which is just a delight, even if you were like myself, who do not play fantasy football all the time. What do you have coming up besides that we should be looking for?
We got our fantasy rankings up. We got our initial fantasy rankings up. It's that time of year again. It's crazy. But no, we obviously we'll start to ramp up our fantasy coverage as this offseason goes on. We got our initial rankings up. We're going to have our draft guide, our fantasy draft guide is going to get expanded over the summer. That's what we're working on primarily. And then, of course, we got our fantasy show, the Ringer Fantasy Football Show. So check us out. We do a lot of fun, random stuff in addition to fantasy. We're kind of a fantasy show by title, and then we do a lot of other things just for fun.
That's how they get you in, but then you stay for all the shenanigans.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. And rumor of maybe an East Coast show, which would be awesome to see in person. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, I hope so. We just got done with a Chicago show, and eyes now on somewhere on the East Coast, hopefully in August. But there's no official plans yet, so we'll have to see how that all goes.
Yeah. All right. You're the best. Thank you for taking all this time, almost an hour to talk through ceilings and comps and actually liking a lot of my comps. I felt good. I'm going to be pepping my step throughout the rest of the day. I'm
telling you, when you bring up like a early 2000s type of like that era, and it makes you go, oh, that's an interesting one. Like that's all you can ask for from a comp. I like it.
It's just like a nostalgia bump, like
exactly.
We were doing 2000s baseball. This podcast,
like name a guy, Mark McLemore.
Yeah, dude, naming guys naming dude.
I like it.
Doug Mirabelli. Okay, before we discuss another
Brett Boone.
Thank you, buddy.
Just naming Mariners. All right, see you, man. Thanks.
All right, as teased last week, we have one of our longest running mail fans is back. Carlos taking a break from finals week all the way out, Bay Area. And good to have you back, man. I have no idea what we're going to talk about here today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me back. Obviously, I love talking football with anyone, but especially, the Andrew Callahan. You were the first person that I ever really spoke to about football that's from the beat. So I'm happy to be back. But in terms of the topic that I'm honestly pretty passionate about, just because I don't know why people I feel like the mindset on it's pretty like universal right now, is that Rhamondre Stevenson is out of a job. And I do not agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. I understand that they took a 2nd round running back, but I view it as more as like the Patriots just got a weapon and not necessarily a replacement for one of their other weapons. And I know a lot of the view on Rhamondre Stevenson right now is not good, but I really think that the Patriots could have one of the best 1-2 punches in the NFL for the next following season. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that. I wanted to talk about that in general. So I just want to hear what you have to say.
Well, obviously, Rhamondre Stevenson is not losing his job to TreVeyon Henderson because he's losing it to Lan Larison, everyone's favorite, FCS back on Twitter, which I joked about before we got started. And I'll say again for people who don't know, if you want to be on the show, you want to do what Carlos just did, spring a 10-minute segment on me and do whatever you want. Donate $10 or more to Doug's campaign, my page, Leukemia Lymphoma Society, help all the money going to cancer research, people dealing with cancer. If you need the link, email me, DM me, or you can find it on my X pinned there at the top to donate $10 and be on the show. Look, I think it's a good point because, look, Rhamondre Stevenson, as we all know, is not coming off of a very hot season. And this goes for 2 years in a row, right? They rewarded him with an extension anyway, saying, we don't believe you're the player that statistically showed up in 2023. Now they're saying, well, if he doesn't show up again in 2025, because 2024, good start, faded, bad offensive line, et cetera, we have a plan B. And he might be the best all-around back, aside from Ashton-Jeanty, in the entire draft. So I think what that'll do in the short term, Carlos, is motivate him. A motivated Rhamondre Stevenson is a top 12 back, maybe pushing top 10 in the entire NFL. We just haven't seen it in a long time. So they said, okay, even if we believe in him, we need something more concrete. And TreVeyon Henderson in the long term should be the starting running back. In the meantime, should push the current guy, and if need be, supplant him. So, yeah, I would believe and bet on a motivated Rhamondre Stevenson. But, I mean, when was the last time you saw him? Maybe the opener last year, right? Is like, oh, there's this dominant running back, right? Was that the last time you would say that about him?
Yeah, I would say there was like sprinkled throughout the season. There were some runs that it's like, there's Rhamondre, there's like the guy that we've seen for the past couple seasons in New England. But like, I'd be lying if I said, yeah, like there were also moments that it's like, who is this guy in the backfield? Like, he looks like he has nothing left in the tank at times. But like I said, I mean, everyone knows, if they follow me, like they know that I'm pretty optimistic when it comes to my Patriots outlook. So I'm going to be leaning towards that optimistic side, that like those little spurts that we've seen from Rhamondre, like the positive ones, like that's still in there. Like he could still put a good season together. So with that being said, I just think that with this Josh McDaniels offense and with this improved offensive line, I think that we can get those spurts, and I guess you could say just make them consistent now, back to the old Rhamondre. And I know a lot of people have been saying that the TreVeyon, he's going to fill in that James White role. But obviously times like 10, right? Like he like, all love to James White. I love the guy, but TreVeyon is just like a souped up version of him, in all honesty. But like I said, it's like you have to kind of play a fine line, because we are talking about the same prospect that was battling through injuries in his first couple seasons of college when he was the bell cow. And then as soon as they get Quinshon Judkins, it's like a perfect like 1-2 punch, and he has an amazing season. And I could see that happening with him and Rhamondre. I just think that they can have that perfect, what's the word that people use? They just like fire and lightning. Like people just like
thunder and
using,
lightning.
Like, yeah, just like a bunch of little phrases that people use for that. But yeah, with that being said, I just think that it's more of an opportunity for them to have a sustainable run game that doesn't get one of them tired or injured or something. It's just keeping everyone fresh while also getting the best out of the guy that they just signed to a contract extension last offseason.
Yeah, and I think, what does the best version of this team look like? It's a healthy Rhamondre Stevenson. Mm-hmm. It's an effective TreVeyon Henderson, where everybody eats, right? Because they're helping keep each other fresh. And when you list their best weapons, as you described TreVeyon Henderson, both of them are, I would say, in the top 5 right now, right? That you're ranking. So even if they do play a position where it's not totally like quarterback, you can only have one at a time, and they'll run out those pony sets with 2 halfbacks. Mm-hmm. Like you want to get the most out of your talent. If you have a disproportionate amount of your skill talent at running back, you got to play them more or rotate them. And I think in doing so, we'll help each other finish strong, because even you go back to Rhamondre's his best season statistically, broken tackles, total yards, receptions, everything was 2022, right? And he really plotted through the end of that season, right? That Christmas Eve game against the Bengals, and he fumbles right at the end and it costs them the game. And you're like, how can I even be mad at this guy? Because he's the only reason that offense had a pulse before they beat the Dolphins on New Year's Eve and then go to Buffalo and lose and they're out of the playoffs, ending the Matt Patricia era in just glorious fashion. So there's a world in which we don't have to do the Rhamondre versus TreVeyon thing, right? And I think you would agree that's kind of where you want to be. You want everyone at their best.
Yeah, exactly. I just think right now it's just too much discourse around Rhamondre's fumbling issues and that they need a new running back because he's 27, that he's not good anymore. But just like how you put it, like having both of them at their best is going to give us the best version of this Patriots team. It's not going to be just one of them superseding the other. And I do want to preface this by saying, if any of the listeners are in my fantasy league, I'm not just saying this because I'm a Rhamondre Stevenson fantasy manager. I'm not saying that because of that. I'm just saying it because I truly believe that if this offense in particular is going to succeed, not just the team as a whole, but just the offense in particular, it's going to be through the running game, and it's going to be with both of these running backs playing at their absolute best, and TreVeyon getting them maybe down the field with Josh McDaniels loves his screen passes with maybe a 50-yard screen pass, and then Rhamondre punching it in from the goal line. Like, that's something very realistic that I can see. And we've seen it in the past. Like James White, his best season had like 87 receptions, I believe. He superseded like 750 yards. if we can even get TreVeyon Henderson getting half of that in like his rookie season, for example, like that tells you that it was an effective 1-2 punch. It's not just like them relying on one guy to do all the work. Just like TreVeyon did with Quinshon Judkins at Ohio State this past season. So I just think that it's the best opportunity for this offense to be, you could honestly say maybe like top 15, if anything, if their running game is going to be effective.
Woo! Now we're getting fired up. There's those optimistic takes, which you should want from a fan/information account at Los Talks Pats. I will say this too on the Henderson part, because you brought up James White a couple of times. James ran a 4.57, and we all knew was quicker than he was fast. TreVeyon has got legit pull away 4.4 speed, like topped out at 22.65, I think it was, miles per hour. Fastest, if not top 3, among all running backs in this class on the field in pads. That dude can fly. You get him on a slugger route, you get him on a wheel. Like that is an added element to the vertical passing game that even the best of these third down backs the Patriots have had couldn't add. But the thing I want to ask you before we get you out is this. I like that you push back against, people say narrative. It's not a narrative. It's just a growing consensus Twitter take, right? Mm-hmm. What's another thing that might be bugging you, grinding your gears, or maybe even a media take that you're like, okay, hold on, not so fast?
I would honestly just say it's people giving up on the young receivers really fast. And I'm talking about Jalen Polk and Javon Baker in particular, mostly Jalen Polk, because it's like, why are you going to be rooting for the team to get rid of these guys after the team just spent like high draft capital on them? Like that's what keeps teams bad. Like you should be rooting for them to improve, to like outperform their value, or even just perform at a second round, whatever that might be, like a second round wide receiver value. I just think that people are giving up on these guys way too fast and just expecting them to perform at their absolute peak right away in their rookie season. Like I've been putting out feelers saying like, what would a successful season from Will Campbell and from Kyle Williams look like? And I'm getting people saying like, oh, all pro or all rookie team, or like Kyle Williams getting over 1,000 yards like right away. And it's like, how is that like kind of quantifying how good they're going to be? Like, what if they just do much better than what the numbers say, and just show improvement maybe during the half end of the year? So I just think it's like people just having really high expectations for the young players and then giving up on them immediately when they don't perform up to their standards or like their personal standards.
Yeah, not to mention that's the history of a lot of receivers in the league. I mean, maybe less so when you look around, but I've said multiple times, I think this will be a different Josh McDaniels offense. And to your point, like these are players they've invested in. So what if it was a little bit different regime? They're still here. There are traits that other teams like them to be a top 50 player in Polk's case or Baker's case fell because of character concerns. Like he gets his head on straight. There's a guy who just moves differently. Forget the timing and the analytics and the speeds and this and that. You just watch him and go, whoa. You know, you need more players like that. That's why they got Kyle Williams. They signed Stephon Diggs for the hope and the prayer of that. If it happens to be someone that emerges that's not named Diggs or Kyle Williams, but still works out, they're all wearing the same helmet. So I'm like that portion of Twitter, which again, not a reasonable place or a place for self-esteem. You're rooting for a team. Okay. So the competition they brought in, I think is a positive. And I like that because we can agree on this too. I would imagine, tell me if I'm wrong. We can think it's unlikely that Jalen Polk or Javon Baker break out this season, but still think it's obviously in the best interest of the team that does happen. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Like I understand being realistic, but it's also like you shouldn't be viewing it as like, I hope that they don't do better than they did last season and we should just get rid of them. Like, am I extremely optimistic that they're going to break out? No, but is that what I'm hoping in the back of my mind? Of course.
Yeah, it's like rooting for an underdog in the championship. Are you going to bet your mortgage on something? No, it doesn't mean you're not a fan or you don't care. You're just kind of being realistic about it. All right, reasonable as always. Follow him at LOS Talks Pats, Los Talks Pats. Carlos, you have tests. You have more important things to get to, but appreciate the time. And are you going to come to training camp this year?
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to make the trip out.
All right, everyone look for his content. I'm sure I'll see you there, and I appreciate you coming on and donating, pal.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
You got it.